Hi all, Pembroke here, and at long last with results I promised a while back. This is the first of many game reviews I ever wrote, for the first game I ever finished on stream, Night in the Woods. To mark 2 whole years since I began streaming, I finally converted it to video essay format to spread it to a wider audience, and perhaps to some provide some nice background noise. If you're here for the first time because you like the game, consider sticking around. For all the games I've streamed since, this one is by far one of my favorites. In the past few years since its release, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about Night in the Woods. Even more surprisingly, I was never spoiled on any major plot points. I went into the game knowing only the following. Mae Borowski is a depressed college dropout from a small town, too scared to look for a new lease on life because she's attached to her old one. She has to spend the course of the game reconciling with the fact that change is inevitable, and that she, like all of her childhood friends, needs to grow up. As far as that goes, the game met my expectations. Mae is a very authentic representation of a disillusioned young adult trying to navigate a world that she knows to be hostile and full of expectations she can't meet. Her dialogue with others and her internal monologue both are incredibly consistent with the profile of your average depressed person. Some of the things that run through her mind, about her relationships, her body, her place in the community, her goals or lack thereof, hit almost uncomfortably close to home for me. I've seen a number of people call Mae incredibly relatable, and for good reason. But that's not to say that she's a caricature of the depressed millennial who exists to be projected onto. Mae is still very much her own person, even as she struggles to figure out who that person is. Though she tries her best to be a good friend, she's impulsive, directionless, immature, and not very smart. Her biggest problem, though, and a large part of her ongoing conflict, is that everyone around her seems to have everything figured out more than she does. Her parents had her life planned out for her from the start, and are disappointed that she couldn't succeed. Her friends have, to an extent, moved on from their pasts, threatening to leave her behind in both a figurative and literal sense. Places she grew up with are closing down as even the very landscape of Possum Springs shifts around her. She, paralyzed by the relentless passage of time, doesn't know how to cope with this. And that's when, on a seemingly ordinary Halloween night steeped in the same tradition she's grown up with, the external movement of the plot comes in. Mae witnesses what she firmly believes to be a ghost kidnapping someone. What's impressive about how this shapes the conflict is how heavily Mae's perception shapes everything. This may seem like a given for many protagonists, but for a character like Mae, it leaves the audience guessing a lot. She struggles at times to remember things and determine what's real and what isn't. When in unfamiliar or stressful situations, she becomes so overstimulated that she begins to dissociate. In this instance, that feeling of being unable to truly know what Mae saw despite seeing it through her eyes enhances the dread that comes with every appearance of this mysterious figure. We know that everyone around Mae, whether they offer to help her or tell her to stay out of it, is pretty sure that it's a living person who may or may not actually be out to get her. But could that explain the strange dreams that Mae's been having? Would it explain why the same person seems to be stalking her and her friends into remote areas at night? The tension of knowing that Mae is in danger but not knowing who or what the danger is mounts in a way that induces genuine anxiety, all the way up to the big reveal. The kidnapper was part of a group that sacrifices people to the abandoned coal mine out in the woods because they believe it will make the town prosper. Here, Mae is offered an ultimatum that shakes her to her core. She and her friends can carry on this tradition in secret, as the cult's members are growing too old to reliably continue it. The cult fears that their way of life will come to an end, and with it, so will the town. Mae then comes to the uncomfortable realization that to an extent, she understands these people. Not why they're murdering drifters, of course. Not why they were the ones behind the brilliantly foreshadowed death of Mae's old friend Casey. But she gets that fear they have. She has spent so much of her life wrestling her inability to keep things the same as they always were, and feeling helpless for it. These people are just acting on that fear of change in the worst, most violent way possible. And this is why I'd say that Night in the Woods is a game about a murder cult without really being about a murder cult. It's much more of a conflict of man versus self. The plot moves thanks to the actions of the cult, but the cult isn't what Mae spends the whole game fighting. What Mae has to contend with is the far scarier concern that she will never amount to anything, and that everyone and everything will one day leave her to rot, rendering all her happiest memories and relationships meaningless. The resolution, then, isn't really the gruesome, probably, deaths of the cult members left in the ruins of the mine. That's part of it, but it's not what we're meant to be thinking about at the end of everything. Whether or not the cult persists, in fact, doesn't really matter. What they were doing was a pointless fight against change that accomplished nothing but the suffering of a few powerless individuals. This is the scaffolding that holds up the story's entire point. The ultimate takeaway from this game, as far as I understand it, is that change is something that can't be stopped. but it doesn't remove the meaning of what once was. People will grow up, old friends will move out, buildings will get torn down and new ones will rise in their place. Sometimes you won't like it, sometimes it will hurt, but even with that hurt, you can still get up and keep moving and somehow be okay. That hurt, if nothing else, is proof that it meant something. The game's writing is remarkably successful in part because everything fits together to reinforce this message. In a much larger game with a bigger world, you can expect to see more excess in the conversations strangers have, or in other pieces of flavor text the developers figure most people won't interact with. It doesn't always feel super important. Here too, it's not as if you're missing out on anything vital if you skip a few optional interactions. The difference is that there is almost no conversation that doesn't contribute something to what the game is trying to say. Even taking what I just said into consideration, you shouldn't rush past every side conversation that you see. If you miss a few things, it's no big deal. If you don't pay attention to any of it though, you miss out on a lot. It's no coincidence that you run past the same few groups of people when going around town on your way to meet with B or Greg. One group of older people has continuous disputes about what should be done with the town. Another group is trying to encourage their washed-up friend to look for a new job, all while lamenting that they don't have as much free time to spend together anymore. Mr. Chazukov uses stories about the stars to imbue May with a sense of appreciation for what little she has. Meanwhile, Pastor Kay risks her job to help a homeless man named Bruce, whose basic needs are left to the mercy of the city council. Selmer's poems are all fun and games until she writes a lengthy, biting criticism of capitalism to present to the Poetry Society. May's dad hates his job, but works so that she and her mom can have free time. The town seems to be falling apart, and none of the younger people want to stay, but older people are growing increasingly unable to scrape together the means to provide for themselves. History persists in decaying statues and murals of people who killed and died to preserve the right to unionize. It is a very real and very relevant picture of a rural area reluctant to progress while remaining just as subject to the whims of the free market as everywhere else. I feel that it is especially relevant because in a world where it is becoming more and more difficult to see a worthwhile future for yourself, a world that is terrifying and in no way conducive to creativity or passion, it is important to be reminded that things still have meaning. These conversations are what gives the game its replay value. Though I don't think that's something that every game needs, this is a game where people greatly benefit from a replay. In fact, you can't see what's behind every character without one. The developers have crafted it in such a way that you will always be able to see something new or something you overlooked when you go through it all again. After all, getting to know May's friends is crucial to her own development because it is what causes her to notice that not everyone is held together quite as well as she thinks they are. Bee struggles to handle the family business almost entirely alone after her mother's death and her father's subsequent breakdown, and wants nothing more than the freedom to go to college, a freedom May was given and threw away. She must grapple with feelings of friendship she still retains after spending years with May, alongside feelings of deep-seated resentment that May discarded a privilege she can't have. Meanwhile, Greg and Angus, happy as their relationship is, have problems because Angus is tired of needing to be the responsible adult of the two, and Greg struggles against his reckless nature to become someone who could be good for Angus. They have a plan for the future, but that plan is as tenuous as any other, and something that, as two gay men with minimum wage jobs in a small town, they have to work hard towards. I could write a whole other essay about how refreshing the LGBT representation in this game feels, how it's just there and relevant without being a dramatic sob story, but the game doesn't try to make that its whole point, so I won't here either. It just means a lot to me, and hopefully to many others. It is also important that May solidifies these relationships for the audience because that is what helps to justify their presence at the climax of the story. Certainly her old friends have grown up and become different people than the ones she remembers, but they haven't outgrown her. Though unable to understand her, they are willing to follow her into danger because they still feel for her and want what's best for her. At the beginning of the game, there are people she hasn't spoken with for some time and subsequently drifted apart from. By the end, there are people anyone could tell she's been tight with for years. It's there in both the ride-or-die, high-stakes situations, and in the more laid-back instances where they can just talk to each other. From the silly to the serious, it feels true to life. These are talks real people could and probably do have. These are also people players can understand May's fear of losing. When experiences like these are made to feel as real as they are, real as if the developers understand them on a personal level, it makes for a more impactful narrative, more emotionally investing characters, and a world that people actively want to explore for details. In this particular case, it has helped to shape a story that is thematically consistent, without being too heavy-handed. The game's core message could easily have been delivered in a way that was either nihilistic or condescending, but I found it to be neither. I thought, more than anything, it was a message of hope from people who understand hopelessness. The daunting, inescapable truth is that the world is an unfeeling thing, and that time can't care about the people that it affects with its unstoppable march forward. In the time that passes, you will become a participant in the performance of adulthood, whether you are ready for it or not. You will lose things that are important to you. People will leave you even when they don't mean to. The pain that comes with all of that is a real and difficult thing to grapple with. To resist it is natural. To wonder why it all happens is also natural. But even when there isn't a reason behind every unfortunate event in our lives, there is always a reason why they are painful. They hurt because they meant something. If the things we lost weren't important, we wouldn't have so much trouble letting go of them. Did you not enjoy the meals you had with your friends at that old mom-and-pop restaurant that closed down recently? Did you not look forward to getting notifications from the friend you now only speak to in passing? Did it not make your day to receive those gifts from your ex at the time, even if now you can hardly stand to look at them? One could say that Night in the Woods is a game about how nothing matters and everything matters. In the grand scheme of things, the universe really doesn't care. But that doesn't mean that existence is pointless. Every encounter that we have, every person we meet, and every person we lose, leaves in us something new. May emerges from the mind that night a different person, even if she's not sure exactly how or whether it was for better or worse. What she does know is that no matter how the world turns from that point forward, everything that happened to her in the past weeks has shaped her in a way that she otherwise wouldn't have been shaped. Horrible as it was, it all meant something. She came to accept that her friends have grown in her absence because they're still her friends. She's accepted, too, that if and when they're gone, it will hurt, but the hurt isn't what she'll hold on to forever. Isn't that beautiful? How wonderful it is to know that there is empty space that does nothing for us, but it is filled with people who would do anything for us, even if only for the moment. If the media we consume can also be considered life-changing, then Night in the Woods most certainly was for me, just as everyone told me that it would be. It wasn't just that the narrative was tight, the characters were dimensional, the asides were illuminating, or the mechanics were engaging. It's that I've rambled on for 10 minutes already, and I'm still remembering things that I could say. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you all that I'll be thinking about this game for the rest of my life, and will probably go on to recommend it to everyone I know. I'm also certain that at some point in the future, when I need these reminders again, I'll pick it back up and come upon all sorts of things that I've missed, and finish it feeling completely new again. That's just the sort of game that it is.